Let's go over some of the parts. Some will be repetition, some will be new findings. Also stay tuned for the driver's side auxiliary radiator testing video that I'm going to do next, because I have made some new findings on that as well. Coolant expansion tank, coolant expansion tank cap. We're going to reuse this. We are also going to reuse this bolt here. This is not any kind of a severe stress bolt. Here we have the shock struts. What am I saying? The crash struts. This car's starting to annoy me with all its components. All the accidents that this car has had, I've been calling it a body shop special, but it seems that none of them were major enough to touch the frame or anything, at least in the front, because both of these components are seemingly original. Okay, the tags are so old on this one, and this one, the tag is the same size and it's completely worn off. These are good signs that this is original stuff and this car hasn't been in major accidents. Now, with these, we're not going to replace them. I don't know if they wear out over time or anything like mechanics always say about the belt tensioners. These are, I think they were around 900 US on ECS Tuning, which is the only site I saw them available on, and who knows how much stock they really have. So as long as you have these, that they're supposed to be hydraulic, if they're not leaking fluid, then you should be okay to reuse them. Just don't drop them to damage them, because it is easy to store these somewhere and you're gonna not be careful and you could break them. Okay, moving along. This coolant hose contraption has stamped joints here with a piece of plastic. So I think this all might come as one part. We'll see on the 7-zap diagram. 2 ear clips, 1, 2, and 3. Again, all this hardware, however much new they have, I'll buy. If they don't have it, we're going to be forced to reuse. And as I've said before, we might be using worm clamps in some instances because it's too difficult to install in service position, and we will just test worm clamps out a little bit more like that. Okay, so this is another one of the hoses that runs behind the driver's side headlight. So this and 2 clamps. This is another one of those hoses that goes to the auxiliary water pump and something else. So this hose and 2 clamps. So what I have here, we might be able to reuse it, but it's like a push rivet plastic that held in one of the coolant hoses. Just kept it in place and plugged into something. It broke a little bit, so one of these, if the supplier has it. I kept this chunk of plastic because it fell off of something. In case we have leaks, we can associate it with something. Here is our belt tensioner. So one of these. I wish these came separate. I think on some aftermarket sites you can buy these separate. But we're going to try to go OEM from a proper supplier because I'm not messing with this car. So I'm pretty sure the supplier I'm going to be going with has this. And this entire piece all is one assembly for sale. So I'm going to buy that with the pulley so the bearing is okay and everything. The bracket at the bottom needs to be reused, so I'm going to really clean that up. And I've discussed the orientation of the new one and why I've kept this on the bracket, and you will see in the reinstalling video what's going to go on with this. But we're going to keep this until we reinstall everything, okay? So this hardware and tools is associated with that belt tensioner mechanism. I am pretty sure the new one is going to come with all of these included on the unit. So we will keep these. We're not going to order anything. We'll see what happens. So inside of the cow milk thing, there's some Volvo parts for a Volvo video I haven't made for a long time. And I've mixed in some of my Audi bolts just because I needed the storage space. So let's dump it out and see what's in here. So it is my belief that what we have left here is all Audi parts. These I'm pretty sure are associated with those shock struts. So just for myself, when I do my 7-zap search, 2 times this bolt plus washers. These also seem to be associated with those. So 2 of these bolts plus washers, if available. Make that 6 of those bolts total. Okay? Now there's a bunch of small nuts here too. I think these go for that little gasket that goes in between the frame rail and the shock strut for the crashing the car. They look fine, so I'm not going to order anything. Plus I'm hoping I don't mix things up. Okay, these seem like Volvo bolts. Let's get those out of here. Yeah, this is a Volvo bolt too. And what we have here is 2 more of the service position bolts. So I'm only using 2 of them because of the way I put it in. So these are in very good shape. They do not need to be reordered. No rust, nothing. Okay, so we're not going to get those. And the rest are all just tools and small hardware that could or could not be related. And all of these washers are made of materials that aren't rusted. So put everything back in the milk cow thing because I know it's all in there. And this can be used for both the Volvo video and the Audi videos. This is here in case you are on a battery tender. Just store this in the back seat of your car or something, or the trunk, so that you don't lose it, because it will be in the way. If I'm saying the name of the parts correctly, I'm pretty sure that this is the hose we recently struggled with. So 2 clamps and the hose itself. And this runs from the passenger side auxiliary radiator to the primary oil cooler at the front of the block. Okay, but this is the part. I'll find it on the 7-zap diagram. If I was wrong, we will correct that. What we have in here is we are going to replace these if they are available. So 3 times the long bolts for the bracket underneath the engine that holds the belt tensioner bracket to the bottom of the engine. So they're Torx bolts, T30s, and 1 is shorter than the other 3. So 4 bolts total, match them up on 7-zap. Could reuse these, we will if we need to, but you guys remember, I broke the 1 bolt while torquing it to spec on top of the intake manifold. I don't torque to spec. If I were to reuse these, I'd be fine, okay, because I just snug stuff, but that was done properly. Okay, you know what, this is the annoyance of just working on old cars, and now I have to explain this stuff on the internet to people. Listen, just replace the bolts if you can, okay, if you care about the car and you don't want the absolute headache of breaking bolts, even for the 1% chance. Now here's another case of me hiding stuff from myself. I am pretty sure those 2 small bolts are for the snorkel, which I thought I've lost for the past number of months. But it was in this paint cap can on my shelf. So do not need to reorder those 2. Those are more than fine to be used a million times. This is the belt for the alternator. We've gone over this in more detail, the chunks that are missing in other videos. So this will be ordered, 1 of these. This is more recent. So some of the part suppliers are more expensive than others for these flap actuators. I don't want to go too in depth with that, but I'm pretty sure the 3.2 V6 cars and some of the A6s with the 4.2 V8 also use the same part number. I might shop around for this. I might just put it in my one big order from the one part supplier. So 1 times flap actuator, you should be getting 2, but I'm just going to get 1 for now because I have another intake manifold video planned for the future, and I'll just make another parts order then for that. And here is another thing that happened today when I was just, Canon autofocus is very weak here. My light is not that good, but whatever. This clamp is for that hose that runs into the coolant expansion tank at the top of the engine. So when I took it off in that video, I thought it had snapped back or stayed with the coolant tank, but this 2-ear clamp was just sitting there right on top of some component on the driver's side of the engine bay. So I picked it up and I got lucky that I still have this, but this is how I'm showing you how easy it is to lose parts and then Gotta be really careful. Make sure to go over every single part you have. So this is stored with these things, and I have this. It's in very good shape because it's the top of the motor, not a speck of rust. We're not replacing this. Final two items in that paint cap can are the T20s that hold the flap actuator in place. They're in pretty good shape, but one of them has a good amount of rust on it. Probably the lower one that's at the front, because this car didn't have an under tray on it. So if these two pieces of hardware are available, we will be replacing those bolts as well. And here we have our paint cap can with all of our bumper installation hardware. It's lots of rusty stuff, but the T30 still grab decently. I might go on 7Zap's site and just get a whole bunch of new of these parts, but this is done to death in my front bumper removal video for the RS4, so that stuff's still there. This piece of plastic that you remove, I'm pretty sure it only had one bolt, okay? And that one bolt is somewhere. We are going to run into it soon. But store this also in the back seat or the trunk of your car. Give it a nice wipe down after. You don't want this to get banged up and scratched because it's a show item of the visibility of the car. And the weather stripping goes around it, so keep it clean. Alright, that's enough of that piece of plastic. Aluminum crossover pipe at the front of the engine. So this is why it's good to go over these parts. The gasket over there is the one we took out just yesterday in the previous video on the block side. But because these things are hard to orient in your brain when you have the water pump missing and tons of components, you see I kept this green gasket here on this side of the aluminum crossover pipe. So order one of these off 7Zap. This bolt that's tie wired on here, if it's sold separately, a new bolt, if it's sold separately from this. Also, this drain plug washer, which could have also been the source of one of our coolant leaks, with the drain plug if they come separate from the coolant pipe itself. If not, we'll have to reuse all this stuff. So this for me to match on the 7Zap diagram. Good to go over all your parts. Moving along. Inside here we have the crusty water pump bolts. There are 5 of them. You'd have to go in an older video to know what size the head is, but we're going to order them new if they don't come with the water pump, because these could break. Again, if they're not available, we're going to reuse them, so keep them. Alright, so here we have an interesting paint cap can. I found this one on the shelf and I have absolutely no idea where any of them go. Fortunately, wherever these Torx bolts go, they don't have much rust on them, so I'm not going to reorder them unless I'm going through the diagram and I see on the parts that these come with something. Now this is the one bolt that I was telling you I think is associated with that plastic piece there that holds it in. So these, because they have no rust, they do look like they are somewhere on the top of the motor. Maybe they even just hold some brackets or something in. So 3 times T30 if I figure it out when I'm on 7Zap. New discovery on the water pump based on what happened yesterday in that video with all that crusty sealant we found. Check this out. I didn't think much of it because I was looking at other parts of the water pump. But that same sealant is on this side. You see me? I'm going to start scraping it off. Even inside the hole there's a piece of sealant. I didn't get it out with my finger right there, but if I could position it for the camera, you can see the tech, whoever put this water pump back, most likely after the AC compressor job, just carelessly put sealant everywhere. Look, it's inside the hole. I mean, I know for a fact there should not be sealant inside there. So who knows, maybe sealant damaged the water pump. Maybe it damaged something else. Now, other things we are going to do with this water pump is, as I've mentioned before, I still have this piece still on the water pump. Now, there could be some kind of an arrow that I don't know about to align the hose properly when the new hose comes. But I will go over this with the supplier if I do have issues. Yeah, there you go. That chunk of sealant just fell out. You saw it on camera. The water pump, I'm going to mark the new one and the new short hose so that it's oriented correctly, with the hope to God that this was put on correctly at the beginning and this was never a coolant issue. So, yeah, That's as much as I can tell you there. You guys remember that this is the other side of that hose. So for myself on 7-zap, 2 times clamps, 1 times this short bent hose, and 1 times water pump full with thermostat housing. You see, I'm hoping I'm not missing any O-rings that used to be in here or something, but that is what it is. And 1 times this bigger clamp on the thermostat side of the water pump, if available. Now, I've had a chance to look at this water pump a bit more carefully, and I'm going to show you some of the findings that I have, and I haven't discussed them to date because there's some controversy in what I think about them. Now, look at this date stamp, 03, 04, 09. I don't know if they did month, day, year, or day. Oh, I feel like an idiot right now. Day, year, month. This could be the original water pump. It could have been changed in 09. Unless they processed this part in 2004. Okay. I don't know, man. You guys, if you do a little bit of Audi nerd searching, you'll know. Somebody will tell you how these parts are date stamped. I don't care to look into that right now. Now, the more important part that you'd be interested in on this water pump, which I still think is not a big deal, okay, is people had said that these water pump bolts are threaded into the fiberglass reinforced plastic, which is not true. They are threaded into metal, pressed in metal inserts, okay, as you can see here. But my car hasn't had an under tray for a long time. It has been winter driven by 10 owners, of which I guarantee you at least 2 were careless. And it's been winter driven hard. Like, there's lots of rust on this for an RS4 compared to what I've seen on this car. And it's been in multiple accidents, as you guys have seen, unknown accidents. Which is why I can't say, some people say they find cracks in these, but this plastic looks in such good shape everywhere, even with the abuse that this car has been through. And the one crack that exists, which is here, this points exactly downwards, and it's at the very front of the car on a very low car, which means there's a very high chance a piece of gravel jumped up and nicked this, okay? The crack has not gone through anything. It's just a very small hairline crack right there where my thumb is. So I still say, yeah, if your normal water pump's good, you can probably put new seals on it and be fine, even if you find that hairline crack on the outside of one of these metal inserts. But suit yourself. I mean, we're replacing everything on mine because we still haven't found the leak, and I'm just replacing it. You should too. There's just the information based off my car. Now you guys make whatever choices you want for yourselves. Next up, we have a few items. So those two are the oil cooler O-rings and the oil cooler O-ring thing bolts with their washers. So for me on 7-zap, these are the parts I need to order. That little green thing was sticking inside of the driver's side radiator, auxiliary radiator. That green thing, and it was bending some of the fins, probably some shipping thing. But do stay tuned for the auxiliary radiator information because we might be developing something there. So I don't know why I stored that with those, but yeah, that's what's in that paint cap can there. In this one, we have all of the parts from yesterday's video, so I'm not going to go over it. Actually, I am going to go over it because I don't want to miss anything when I go on 7-zap. So 1 times the thicker O-ring on the block side, 1 times the green oil O-ring that I'm pretty sure goes for where the hex bolt in the water pump there mates to the motor, and I'm just going to coat it in oil before I install it. I'm not putting any of this stupid gas. See, I even kept all the gasket junk that came with it. So 1 times the green, 1 times that, and 1 times this weird one for the other side of the aluminum crossover pipe at the front of the motor. These are the water pump mounting bolts. In terms of the water pump bolts, we have these 2 long ones. All of the heads are rusty, so I'm going to replace them. If they don't have them, we'll reuse them. These are probably completely fine, but I'm just being overly careful. So 2 of the long T30s, 2 of the mid-size ones, and 2 of the small ones. And 1 more clamp associated with the water pump that's in here that I did not have with the water pump. So when I order, I should know those. It's still out of frame, you gotta be kidding. Okay. Alright, so these parts here, okay? On 7-Zap, I need this help to figure everything out. This piece here is a bunch of coolant hoses that I pulled out from underneath as 1 unit. Again, I don't know how they're sold. We'll figure this out once we get the parts and we start ordering on 7-Zap. But these also, if they are separate, would need alignment on that T-joint. So I'm going to keep all of these together just like this. And I'm pretty sure the check valve is right there that someone on the forum was talking about on this giant piece here. But even this piece is split into 2 pieces, okay? So there's another clamp in the middle. So for myself on 7-Zap, for this contraption, when I'm following it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clamps. Although I think that clamp number 7 is on the water pump right up there. See it right there? That hooks up to that thicker bent U-shaped coolant hose, so I don't need to order that times 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just follow them around because they are different size hoses. And the new check valve should be included with these hoses. I think the check valve is this plastic thing here, so on 7-Zap it will show it as a different part. If it doesn't, it should be included on the internals. We'll see also when we get the new part, when we put it against the old part, what it looks like before we install. So keep all this stuff together. So what we have here is a piece of weather stripping. I can't remember where I took that off from, but it was necessary for service position. I think it runs along the front of the car. Mine has some tears and cracks in it. If you can find a new one, order this as well. I think mine's in good enough clean shape that I'm going to reuse it unless I find it on the site. Now coming over here, there's going to be some new findings. Okay, this headlight is halfway through, partially through its sanding. This one, which looks really good, which always looked pretty good, has not even been started in terms of sanding. So forget about the headlights. Now, what I keep saying about this car having been in all kinds of odd small accidents at every corner, as far as I know to date from what I've seen, the fog lamps have some telltale clues possibly. Now, before we get to that, you see the grills back there? I had said before, this is going to be relevant information for the next video, possibly when we do some tests on the driver's side auxiliary radiator. I have said that I might put a more fine mesh behind that because gravel can get in there and hit the aux rad. You guys have seen that intake, how it's all busted up on my car on the driver's side. So I think the damage that's been done to the fins on the aux rad driver's side was from some object that busted through there and then landed onto the aux rad. These holes are big enough yet small enough that they're not that big of a deal to put a grate behind to make it look ugly, but I will still make a game time decision on that. More on those grates when we start doing some refinishing work on the plastics, because I do have an idea for how I want to mount these to put them back, because you would be hard pressed to ever find this item again in the world unless somebody starts remanufacturing it. Okay, so do listen to what I say when it comes to reinstalling these on your bumper, possibly, if you don't have your own world of ideas for how to do things. Now the bolts and the bulbs, I don't know why I have them here. I'm going to put them back in safe storage. I've already gone over the Body Shop weird spray over on all of the fog lamps. But what's weird here is the date stamp on one of them is 040407. I don't know if Automotive Lighting Germany is the OE provider for the car. And now let's look at the other one. Now, regardless of how they do the day and the month, the date stamp on this one, they've put 2 stickers for some reason from the same company, and one is 270112 and the other one is 260112, which means this car was probably in some kind of a front end collision and this part was replaced. And this is also one of the ones that shows more odd paint marks. And yeah, so that was just a new finding. Now, why is this possibly important in the coolant leak is that driver's side auxiliary radiator. I found some weird stuff today when I looked at it a little bit more. And if this car wasn't a minor lower end accident on that side of the car, and also this pretty headlight over here from the driver's side, this could have been replaced as well. We might find some date stamps for that at some point too, but it wasn't that much different than that before I started. But still, that's a bit beyond the point. The thing is, it could have been replaced, okay? We'll figure out more stuff on the Oxrad once I get to that testing video tomorrow, hopefully. Now, the crash bar. When I say I think this car has been in a bunch of weird small collisions and fixed by body shops that have no business being around such a car, is because now this one that has remained with its rusty screw inside, this is to adjust the front body panels, okay? Hood, bumper. I'm not sure which one this associates to right now because it's all sandwiched, but these screws are adjustment screws, okay, for body panels. Now, the other side, as you can see, is completely missing. It's been torn off. I've discussed this before, but that means it's been hit on the driver's side too. Something has happened, or some careless, brainless person has just tore this off at some point when replacing something because things didn't align, as we have seen that on this car, because this car is also not just an RS4 lesson. This is a lesson on extremely shoddy body work and why you need to always have trusted body shop people for different levels of cars, okay? You take your lease cars to one body shop guy who's kind of bad. You take your decent Japanese cars to the mid-grade guy. When it comes to your real projects, if you're going to take it to somebody, you fork up the big bucks and find a proper body person, okay? And most of the time, those people won't even take you in because they're going to be so busy. Because there's a lot of crooked people in the body shop businesses, but that's a topic for a whole nother video. And on a more triumphant moment, this is the part that I had said I couldn't find. I finally found it. It is a secondary air injection something. I have mentioned the part number for this in another video. So there you go. Go ahead and type that in and match it up to whatever it is, because I can't jog my mind to go over this 6,000 times before I finally install it. But we have this for reinstallation. So actually another removal video will be getting this out before our parts come in, because who knows what's going to happen with that. I mean, here's where we are right at this moment. I am going to put a lot of this stuff in boxes and put it away for now. Hopefully the order will come in soon. We do, like I said, still have some more testing to do. But yeah, I put my Bosch code reader there because it still has not failed us in diagnosing this car without VCDS. I haven't done anything extremely silly yet in terms of part swapping before knowing what I'm doing. But yeah, we'll see how long it takes to get all the parts in, if we need to order from multiple places. But I do have faith that one supplier can supply almost everything on this car. Yeah, so look forward to the video on the driver's side rad, what I'm going to do with it, the SAI thing, and I'm going to continue working on the headlights and the fog lights because it takes a long time when you do it by hand, and that's just the way I do it. You can use power tools to make it go faster, but I'm not putting anything in a vise or anything weird, and all my lights are out. So do pay attention for that. And that will be brief. I'm going to do most of that off camera because you guys have seen what method I use. And I will have a recap. The headlights hopefully will be ready, should be ready by the time all of these parts come in. So yeah, stay tuned, RS4 people. Thanks for watching.